And then, yeah, so can anyone give me a little wave? Do we want any of those last 6? You guys really okay, Anna? You guys don't have to be afraid to ask for questions. I mean, I'm not gonna. Yeah, I am pretty scary. I've worked on my scariness over the years. You want to call me one thing? It's scary. Okay. Alright, so what we're going to do actually to start off with today is not technically notes. We're kind of going to do, to start with a little activity. So you might want a 3-hole punch. So I put it in a different color just so that you guys know it's not notes. But you're going to need your computers. So if your computers need to be plugged in, you might have to like kind of readjust yourself. You guys can go near an outlet if needed. What's that? Not work with other people, no. All right. So this there's directions on what to do on this sheet, but obviously I'll go through it with you. You're going to want something to write with too. Back. So sometimes in math, it actually is a little more helpful for you guys to try and figure out patterns rather than me just telling you this is what happens. So it's going to get stronger in your memory if you guys kind of figure it out and see why something works the way it does. Just like if I was building a bookshelf, if you guys were actually helping me, you'd probably learn how to build it versus just watching me do it. So same idea here. What we're going to do is we're going to use a website called Desmos. If you've never seen this website, it's actually basically an online graphing calculator. So let me pull this up. So there's a bunch of different lessons and activities on here. We're not going to use those. We want to graph. So I feel like maybe I needed to go. Oh, the graphing calculator. That's all we want. So I'm going to go to the graphing calculator. So on the graphing, so like this means you don't have to necessarily buy the $100 graphing calculator maybe that your older siblings or friends have in calculus. Now, if you actually want to use one on a test, you would need it, but this works out pretty nicely. Now, the fact that I'm showing you guys this, know that this is always accessible to you guys when you're at home or in class. And obviously this can graph things for you, but you also have to learn how to graph things by hand on your own because you won't be able to use something like this for a test. So use this as a tool, but not as like a crutch, so that you're not like just relying on this. So it says put this equation, so we're on step 3. Put y equals 4x minus 2 into the first line. So 4x minus 2. And they want us to write down important aspects of the graph. So they want us to write down the slope, the y-intercept, the x-intercept. So if you guys want to look at this with me, so the slope in this case, do you guys remember we can find slope from a graph pretty easily by using rise over run. So I have this little point here. I'm going to count up and over to get to the next little point there. Now if I click on those points, it actually tells me the intercept. So if you want to write those down right away, so this would be the y-intercept, 0, -2, and the x-intercept would be 0.50. So why don't you write those down? So this is on step 3 on the green sheet. So the y and x-intercept you can write down. I have them highlighted. And you can kind of play around with the settings, like if you want to zoom in or zoom out. Now, I'll remember right here. So the x and y intercept here, you guys can write down on that sheet. So the x and y intercept, yep. Oh, you're looking at this right here. Yeah, so you guys, we're on step 3 on your green sheet. So if you can't read what's up there, so on step 3, you should be putting that in. Until we try shutting it down. I don't see anything moving. Okay, so the x and y intercept. Now we want to find the slope. So between those 2 points, I can count with the slope. I'm going to count rise over run. So I'm going to count up 4. So I go up 4 spaces and then over 1. So I'm counting the blocks. So the slope in this case would be 4 over 1. So if you guys want to write that down on your sheet. So let me pull up the sheet as well so you guys can see what I'm talking about. See where we're at so far, just to kind of get you guys on the same page as me or the same problem. And some of you guys are already working ahead because you've kind of got it figured out already. So the slope for number 3, so this equation is 4 over 1. The y-intercept was 0, -2, right? And then the x-intercept was 0.50. So now what I'd like you guys to do is clear the last equation out. So you can just kind of X it out or delete it or type over the top of it. And now we're going to put this equation in. You might have to play around a little bit with the 2/3 and see if you guys can kind of figure out how to get that to work. So the 2/3 might be a little tougher to type in there. So kind of see what you guys can figure out about that. And again, we're going to do the same thing, finding the slope and the y-intercept. Give you in trouble this morning. We'll get you. So when you type it in, the 2/3, you have to make sure the x isn't in the denominator. So, sorry. I was just checking the equation. I think her computer's just being fussy, isn't it? She's working ahead. Only thing is you can simplify that. So you can like divide them each by something. So guys, for the slope, when you figure out the slope, you might want to simplify it as well. But again, kind of clicking on those points, it tells you those intercepts, and then you can find the slope. Now, again, the slope might be a bigger pain, but just know that you can you can go from this point to this one, but really any of these points where it crosses like a point there, you can kind of go to that spot too. So, and some of you guys might already start to see there's a pattern with this. And you can work ahead if you want, if you can simplify that one a little bit more. Yeah, I think not quite. So rise over runs, we should go up.
Yeah,
I think it's left. Yeah. And feel free to work ahead of us if you guys are already like confident that you're good. What's that? Oh, yours is all like zoomed out. So let me, anytime you're like this, you can hit home and then, oh wait. Oh, that's a lie. Well, it didn't thank you then. So the y, the x-intercepts this one. So we put it like that dot, and then the y-intercepts the vertical one. I'm still filling in step 4, so if you guys didn't get there yet. So my graph, the y-intercept is 0, 6. The x-intercept is negative 9, 0. Now the slope, most of you guys, if you went point to point, you got 12 over, was it 12 over 18? So you got 12 over 18 as the slope. However, we want to simplify that. 12 over 18 we can simplify. We can divide them each by 6. And so our slope is going to end up being 2 over 3. Now, I want you guys to kind of start thinking about maybe where that's coming from and like how that's connecting back to this equation. So I'm trying to get you guys to see there's a relationship between some of this with that. So same thing up here. There's a connection there that I want you guys to start noticing. Because if I just told you there was a connection, you'd kind of like retain some of it or understand a little bit of it. But there's going to be a lot more going on there. So if you guys can move on to step 5. So scan down to number 5. You're going to delete the other one off of there and put that new equation in. And some of you guys are way up past us, but that's fine. So how far is way past? Like done?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be you. Okay. So if you're done, feel free to multitask. So putting this new equation in. So let's fill in, if you haven't done so already, if you haven't filled in step 5 yet. So what was our slope in this case for 5? This is slope. Let's figure that one out. What did you guys get for the slope? What did you get? It was a negative 12 over 6, right? So negative 12 over 6. But again, we're going to simplify that to be a negative 2 over 1. The y-intercept was negative 6. And then the x-intercept in this one was negative 3. Okay. So if you haven't done so already, this next one's a little bit goofy. All it has is, it's a negative x divided by 4. So there's nothing being added or subtracted afterwards. So again, if you haven't gotten to this one, flip the page, go to that one. And again, I know some of you guys are further ahead of us, so appreciate your patience. But if you guys are ready to flip to the next one, please, so flip to the back side if you haven't already. This next one's a little weird to find the slope, so I'm going to kind of try to help you guys with that if you struggled with it. I saw a few wrong answers for the slope, so I want to make sure we got it. So this is what your line should look like for number, is that 6? 6. So it crosses the x-axis at the x and y-axis at the same spot, at the origin. But now the slope is a little bit weird because there's like no other place to go to like, there's not another dot that's labeled. So what you can do is kind of look at and see. I don't know if it lets me draw on this at all. I could probably draw it on this way. So I can just go to like the next spot it crosses. So there's my next spot. And if I want to figure out this slope, first of all, is it a positive or negative slope?
Negative.
Negative, nice, negative. He's our creepy slope dude. So we go down 1, and then over 4 spaces. So the slope in this case is going to be a negative 1/4. Make sure you got that as a negative here. So that's going to give us our slope. Now our y and x-intercept are the same point. They're both 0, 0. So they're not very unique. They're the same point. So you only have that one intercept. They're the same. They're shared. Okay? So then last one here, guys. We're going to switch to I always forget how to turn this off. Which one? This one?
Next to the
Oh, thank you. That'll do it. Maybe. Yeah, so then we need to change this. So our last equation then here that we want is x plus 4. So y equals x plus 4. This is our last one here. So, come on, pen.
Yeah.
Oh, there. Okay, sorry. Still not. Okay, there we go. Still learning. It changes colors that way. That's nice. So here's our intercepts. Now, so the x and y intercepts. So the x-intercept is negative 4, 0. The y-intercept is 0, 4. And then our slope in this case, you can do it kind of like the same way I just showed you guys. Or you can go from point to point. I would go up 4, or I guess that'd be 8 actually if you count all the little spaces. And then over 8. So the slope in this case is 8 over 8, which is just
1.
1. Okay. So, question is, so what do you notice about this? So the last question is, look back at the slope, the y-intercept, the x-intercept, and compare it to the equation. What do you guys see? What is that telling us about, like, can you guys look at that equation and tell me something just by looking at it. So take a minute to think about that, and I'll let you guys answer me here in a second. So my last question here is look at your slope, your y-intercept, your x-intercept, compare it to the original equation. So like in number 7, kind of using that as an example. Oh, maybe we'll go back to the first one, sorry. So like looking at that first equation, what do you guys notice about this equation? Like what can you take from this equation that would help you to graph this line? Did anyone see it? Like how is this helpful? So those of you guys who are ahead, now I need you guys back. So if you're working on something else, put that away, focus up here now. So at 4x minus 2, what does that tell me about the equation the way it is? Does it give me any information? Does that match with anything? Anyone see it? So look at your problem for number 3. So everyone should be on the front side of your worksheet. On number 3, yeah. Yeah, do you guys see? This was the slope. Does that happen every time? It does. So every time the number multiplied to x was our slope. That's not a coincidence. And if I had just told you that, you'd been like, okay, not interesting. I mean, maybe you still think it's not interesting, but that's not a coincidence. That works all the time. So if it's in this form, that's telling me the slope. Does it tell me anything else in this equation? Does anyone else see anything else that's like helpful in this equation? Does that -2 have any significance? Yeah, what do you think? This was the y-intercept. And so this was for number 3. Does that work all the time? Did that work in every problem we tried? And I tried to give you guys kind of an assortment of problems where they didn't feel like anything like, did that work in number 4 here? Is 2/3 the slope? It was. Was 6 the y-intercept?
Yes.
Yes, that was happening every single time. That's not a coincidence. So this equation is super helpful to us. It's actually called slope-intercept form for that reason, because it gives you those two things. Now 6 and 7 were kind of two special ones. So let's talk about those for a second. And then I'll show you guys how this applies to our actual math here, or like our homework for today. So we're going to look at these last two. Okay, so this was number 6, and this one was number 7. What was the slope at number 6? It was -1/4. Where's that coming from? Yeah, there's like a 1 we can kind of assume is there in front of that x. So there's our slope, which is kind of a little bit weird in that case. What was our y-intercept in that one?
0, 0.
It was 0, 0. It's not there because if I just added 0, it's the same thing. So there's our y-intercept. They just leave it out because why write +0? That'd be like anything I talked about, I could add 0 to it. That'd be kind of silly to say. How about number 7? What was our slope? 1. Where's the 1 show up?
1x.
1x, and then again our y-intercept. So again, not a coincidence at all. So this green sheet is hopefully to get you guys to start thinking about where all these numbers come from without just telling it to you guys. If I just tell you something, most days I'll just tell you things, but this is one of those that's super important. If we can get Miss Muller's attention, it's her favorite equation. Did she come in and say it yesterday? I can't remember. This is her favorite equation we're going to learn today. It's the one she knows, and so she always is excited to tell us about it. Yeah, so I just want to let you guys know about that. To give you guys a little bit of break, as we're having me do a quick few would you rathers before we start notes. We do still have notes to take, sorry. Required. Required would you rather? Yeah, required fun. Yeah, that's fine.